Good evening.
It's live.
Good evening, everybody. Can we get everyone to find a seat? As soon as Will sits down, we're going to get started.
So we can't leave until after we start?
Right, exactly.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the SCA Regional Orientation Meeting tonight. It's great to see a lot of people here. My name's Dennis Law, and I'm president of SCA this year and mayor of the city of Renton. Would everybody who's here that's ever been here before raise your hand? That's great. So we have a lot of new faces. Well, it's great to see you tonight. We have a full agenda. Deanna's going to introduce our speakers in a few minutes. I just wanted to quickly thank Mia Gregerson. Where's Mia? Mia, raise your hand. Thank you for letting us use your home tonight. And also I wanted to especially thank all of our county officials and PSRC for being here to put on these presentations. So thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoy this.
Thanks, Dennis. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deanna Dawson. I'm the executive director of SCA. I want to thank Mayor Law for being here as board president. Also thank Mayor Anderson, who's the mayor of the great city of SeaTac, for having us here too, as well as our board member Mia Gregerson. It's a great location, and we're also videotaping this tonight so that members who couldn't be here can watch this. So that's a great service we're able to have through the city of SeaTac. Thanks for everyone for being here. Thanks for volunteering your time to serve on these regional boards and committees. One of the real great strengths of the Sound Cities Association is the ability to bring cities together to create regional solutions, and how you do that is through this service on these regional boards and committees. By volunteering your time like this, you're really helping to make your cities and the region as a whole stronger and more vibrant and livable, and I really applaud you for that. So I thank you for your service to community. I also want to thank our staff tonight. We have wonderful staff at SCA, and they staff all these different committees. I want to give a shout out to Christy, who helped put this event together. Christy Burwell is in the back there. I also want to thank Monica Whitman, our senior policy analyst. And our other policy analyst, Doreen Booth, for all her work. And I also want to compliment the staff on something. You've got a booklet in front of you that gives you a lot of detail on all these regional boards and committees. Our staff put that together on their own. They did a great job on it. I really want to thank them for that, and I think that you'll find it very helpful and very valuable as you serve on these committees. The purpose of our meeting here tonight is twofold. First, especially for our new committee members, it's an opportunity for all of you to learn about the structure of county and regional government and your role in that, and also your roles and responsibilities as serving on a committee through SCA. By serving as an SCA committee member, you're not just here on behalf of yourself or even on behalf of your city as a whole, but you're really charged with representing all 35 cities that are members of SCA and the 1 million people who live in those cities. That's the great power of SCA, is to have that common voice for the cities, and with that power comes some great responsibility as well. So later on in the evening, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those roles and responsibilities. But tonight's also an opportunity to hear about some of the important issues that are going to be coming before your boards and committees this year. And on that front, we're really proud and pleased to have a number of distinguished presenters here tonight. First, I'm going to introduce you to Councilmember Jane Haig, who's here from King County. I almost said Snohomish County. I used to work in Snohomish County, and I sometimes still go back to that. So Councilmember Haig joined the King County Council in 1994, and prior to that, she was a member of the Bellevue City Council. She also served as manager of the King County Records and Elections Division. Jane also served as president of the Washington Association of Counties, and in July 2000, she was honored to be elected president of the National Association of Counties. She's a very active member of our community. She's been honored with numerous awards, including Local Legislator of the Year by the National Association of Home Builders, Citizen of the Year by the Kirkland Business and Professional Women Association, and the Public Service Award by the American Society of Public Administrators. In 2013, Councilmember Hague is going to be serving as the Vice Chair of Regional Coordination. And we're very much looking forward to collaborating with Councilmember Hague and working to further strengthen relationships between our member cities and the County Council. So please join me in welcoming Councilmember Jane Hague.
Thank you so much, Deanna. Is this on? You can hear everything? Okay, good. I'm honored to be in front of such a powerhouse. You are the guys that really make things happen, and I think your commitment to local and regional issues is admirable. Council members often see you caucusing before our regional committees and we go, oh boy, they're going to be successful. So I just wanted to tell you, first of all, that I appreciate the work that you're doing. And we recognize in our strategic plan, which we implemented a couple years ago, that one of our main criteria was to make sure that we had good regional coordination. And to that end, this year, the council leadership decided that they needed 2 vice chairs, one for policy development, and that would be Julia Patterson, and one for regional coordination. So I look forward not only to being with you tonight, but to working with you to help bring regional issues to full consensus, because we all know and recognize that our budget problems are not easy to solve, and that it takes consensus at the local and regional level to leverage the funds that we need for our capital, for our infrastructure, and for the myriad of issues and services that we are forced to provide to our citizens. So that is my major goal, is to be working with you to help bring local and regional issues to consensus and get us the funds that we need to provide the services that are so important to the residents and businesses in King County. Economic development continues to be a prime issue for the King County, and not only economic development, but in order to facilitate economic development, we've got to have good education, and we've got to have excellent transportation. And transportation is not only roads, but it's also transit. And we've all got our roads, we've all got our transit issues, and we've all got our own fiscal cliff to deal with those. This is going to be an important year for working with the legislature and the governor, and the county is committed to working with the suburban cities to bring forward a package that gets local, federal, and state funding. So we have a number of avenues that you're already familiar with. And how many are new to serving on Sound City Board? So you know that we have, under our charter, which is our constitution, 3 regional committees, which are Regional Transit Committee, Regional Policy Committee, and the Regional Water Quality Committee. We also have Public Health, which is a regional committee. But under our charter, those 3 committees are comprised of the City of Seattle, suburban cities, and County Council. And in those venues, we're looking at the opportunity to bring forward consensus on the issues for which we've got a mandate. So I know that you have some thoughts on regional policies and regional transit, and I'm delighted that my colleague Reagan Dunn is here to talk about regional transit, and my colleague Joe McDermott is here to talk about public health. They're both extremely important committees, and they're opportunities for all of us to work together and truly make a difference. So thank you again for letting me be here and speak with you, and I look forward to a really meaningful and ongoing relationship with you throughout the rest of the year.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Hague, for being here. Do we have any questions for Councilmember Hague before she... By the way, we don't have the whole room mic, so when we do have questions, I'll be able to restate them for folks after our speakers do give their presentations. We do have a little bit of time in the agenda for Q&A tonight, so don't be shy about asking questions. But thank you so much for being here, Councilmember Hague. We really appreciate your leadership on this issue. We're looking forward to working with you this year. Our next presenter tonight to talk about some regional law, safety, and justice, and mental health and domestic violence issues is King County Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg. Dan Satterberg was elected King County Prosecuting Attorney in November 2007, and he was reelected in 2010 without opposition, which is a pretty nice way to be reelected, actually. Dan served as Chief of Staff for Norm Mailing for 17 years, and he was responsible for the management and operations of the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, including budget, human resources, technology, legislative and policy matters. And before 1990, Dan was a trial attorney in the Criminal Division, where he spent rotations in the Special Assault Unit, the Drug Unit, and served as the office's first gang prosecutor in 1988. Dan and his family live in one of our cities, Normandy Park, and his hobbies include his rock band, The Approximations, where he plays bass and sings. And he has to leave early tonight because he has band practice. So we're happy to accommodate his schedule, and please join me in welcoming King County Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg.
Thank you very much. So the prosecutor's office is involved in regional services. As you know, we have the felony jurisdiction and also jurisdiction over all juvenile matters throughout the county. We look at about 20,000 cases a year that come to us from your police departments as well as the State Patrol and some federal agencies. And it's an honor to be able to work with the police departments. In big cities or small, they're uniformly made up of men and women with great integrity and who really just want to do the right thing. And you have some great leaders, and I'm probably telling you something you already know, but I can confirm that we have some of the best police officers in the country right here working in your departments. The other part of the job of the prosecuting attorney is to work on issue policy matters and matters of criminal justice reform, and that's where I've really gotten to know some of you, and it's been a real honor for me. It has kind of opened up my breadth of awareness about all of the challenges that you all face and the challenges that we face together. And I guess that's my come away from that is that we do these things together. Together we're the 13th largest county in the United States, and together we face the crime and justice issues that affect everybody who lives here. And I don't think the taxpayers really care which unit of government is taking care of their problems. They just want it addressed, and that's what we all have to remember, that it all comes from the same taxpayer wallet, and they don't care how it's divided up. They just want the work done. I'm going to explain three acronyms to you, because there's a lot of acronyms out there. The first one is the MID, the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Fund. Now, that was established in 2007. Legislative authority gave the county council the councilmanic authority to impose a 1/10% sales tax. That money to be used for mental health and drug dependency programs. It raises about $47 to $49 million a year. That's a pretty nice fund, and frankly, if we haven't had the MID the last 5 years, I don't know where we would be, because we cut everything else. But that was the one area where we were able to establish some new programs and to prop up some programs that would have otherwise been cut. We run all of our therapeutic courts through it. We provide services to direct services through in mental health and substance abuse and domestic violence and sexual assault services. So it is really an area where we have had a lot of input. I see some familiar faces here who've been part of the MID group. We're undergoing now a process of having to sort of squeeze within our budget. There is a supplantation issue where the county was allowed to supplant up to 50% of existing programs onto the new MID revenue. That King County never did more than 30%, but now that supplantation ladder is de-escalating so that by 2017 there'll be no supplantation, which frees up more money for some of the more regional services that we provide. So the MID is a large, I think we're meeting about quarterly now, and it's always open to people who are interested in those services. We have identified a number of priorities, and we have funded them, and now we're doing evaluations of them. And anyway, it's been very exciting to be part of that. And I serve as the co-chair this year with Mike Heinisch from Kent, who's a fantastic person to serve with, and has the children and families of Kent at his thoughts all the time, and we're providing some great services, functional family therapy, wraparound services for juveniles throughout the county. And Mike is the kind of guy who's there to make sure that we're not forgetting about the youngest among us too. DVI stands for the Domestic Violence Initiative. I'm the co-chair of that, also with a woman named Meryl Cousins, who runs the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And it is a policy, but a group, but it's also really working practically. We took on last year the issue of protection orders, to make sure that the orders that are issued by your courts actually get where they're supposed to get and are entered into the computer systems, and that those orders are made available to the police officers that drive up on a scene, so they can know whether or not they're encountering somebody who's violated that protection order. You know, so often we thought that we were doing our job just by getting that piece of paper, and then we realized when we drilled down that piece of paper wasn't getting to where it needed to get to the officers who were on the scene. So we connected some disconnections there. That was one of the things we wanted to make some practical inroads with the DVI. We're also working on the U visa issue, and we've spoken with the King County police chiefs and a number of roll calls throughout the county to explain what that means for victims of domestic violence who are immigrants, who are fearful perhaps of cooperating with law enforcement. The U visa is a way to encourage cooperation and to establish a certain level of legitimate status in the country for those who will cooperate. And it's been helpful to get women away from abusive situations where they were otherwise powerless and being manipulated. So those are the kinds of things we do on the Domestic Violence Initiative, and it is a regional meeting. We meet all over the county and try to get out of the courthouse and move it around. Finally, the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee is a committee created by a state statute, has a specific charge given to it by the legislature to really work on regional law, safety, and justice issues. It's a well-named committee. And it has a rotating chair under the statute, so that one year it's someone for the city of Seattle, 1 year it's someone from King County, and 1 year it's somebody from the other cities that are not called Seattle. This year our chair is John Partridge, who from the city of Auburn. John, why don't you stand up? And you were being very ably represented this year. And I told John I'd give him 30 seconds to plug our next meeting, so go.
Yeah, we meet the last Thursday of the month, and January 31st is our first meeting for the year. We're really excited about the kickoff. We've been centering on some issues that not a lot of discussion. We're going to incorporate half an hour of just a chance for people to get to talk, and we'll be talking specifically this next meeting about what's been going on in our nation in terms of public safety issues. We're looking at how we can address things that could happen in Connecticut, smoke malls or cafe racer, things like that. How we could be at least one improvement in accordance with our mission to better manage our resources, to reduce duplication, manage jail, and build partnerships to accomplish that. So if you think you want to be a part of that discussion or listen to what's going on, we want to see you there. So
it's
this is our year.
It's next Thursday at the Seattle City Hall, 7:30 in the morning. So that's where we separate those who are truly interested in the topic from those who are marginally interested. But we'll have a great presentation from somebody who works with at-risk youth with gang members on the ground, who explain how they try to intercede and win the trust of people who don't otherwise trust law enforcement. Go ahead, and we're going to move it around too.
Bob Lee, Alive and Free, you heard about that. You look at Lish from the Metro YMCA. She is bringing that. She's spoken all over the nation. She's been speaking at this meeting. She's kicking off to get our thoughts going in terms of that discussion. So especially after there,
So the first name of this committee is Regional. So we're committed to moving the meetings around as well, and I hope that you're able to communicate with the group and let them know when we're going to come to an area near them. And we had a meeting last year out at the SCORE jail facility, and I think we've got the Criminal Justice Training Center here in Burien/Normandy Park. It's available to us, and so we want to move it around and have different people come and listen and share and get to know what the current issues are in regional law, safety, and justice. And Dave Asher was there from for many years and was the chair, 3 or 4 years ago. I think you were the last chair. Yeah, so it's really only as good as the people who commit to being there and to engaging. It's a great way to network, and we have police officers, we have city council members, we have judges, and we have prosecutors and others, and people who just care about providing services as well. And I should have mentioned on the domestic violence initiative, we also have great representation from our domestic violence our shelters and our programs here, and we're really lucky in King County to have programs like Dawn down in the South County, LifeWire, formerly known as Eastside Domestic Violence Program in the East, and then New Beginnings in Seattle, and there's a number of smaller ones too, but they are always at the table, always interested in making this a better place, and to both support people who are in that the spiral of domestic violence, but also to work on education. And they're always very optimistic people looking forward to that day when we have eradicated it through changing our culture. So those are the groups that I wanted to talk about, and everybody here would be welcome to be at any of those. So I want to make sure that we share, and I'll make sure we share with you, Deanna, our schedule, and we are richer by your presence and your participation. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions?
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for your leadership on all those issues, Dan. Our next presenter to talk about regional transit is Councilmember Reagan Dunn. King County Councilman Reagan Dunn has spent his legal career fighting to make our communities safer through his leadership on criminal justice policy, through his work as a federal prosecutor, and his dedication to providing legal representation to those in our community most in need. Reagan was appointed to the King County Council first in February 2005, and he was then elected in November of 2005 and reelected in 2009 with 78% of the vote, which is also a nice way to be reelected. So Reagan's the outgoing chairman of the Law, Justice, Health, and Human Services Committee in King County, but he also serves as chair of the Regional Transit Committee, and that's what he's here to talk to us about tonight. So we're very pleased to have Councilmember Reagan Dunn here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very, very much. Yeah, I wanted to say welcome to those folks who are new to elective office and public service and new to staffing. Welcome to the club. Say goodbye to all your friends. You're going to lose them. Let me just talk two things. I've got two regional responsibilities this year. The first is chairing the King County Flood Control District, which is actually a separate unit of government where the 9 King County council members serve as supervisors, and it raises about $36 million each year for levee protection, and that's county-wide. You get a chunk of money for special projects that come from that for each of the cities. I want to talk about the other responsibility I have, which is Regional Transit Committee. I'll chair that again this year. Councilmember Sternoff has served as vice chair in the past, and I think will again this year. And let me explain what that does a little bit. Under the King County Charter, RTC has jurisdiction over countywide transit policy. Currently, the Strategic Plan for Public Transportation goes from 2011 to 2021, and it includes the Metro Service Guidelines, and that's the policy document that encompasses our countywide policies. The committee also follows the implementation of policy, reviewing briefings from the Transit General Manager. So while the County Council has sort of funding decisions, the general policy oversight falls to us at a regional level. This is going to be an interesting year for RTC as we improve on the strategic plan and the Metro Service Guidelines, how we operate our system and how it runs effectively. For those who haven't served on the RTC, here's kind of a short summary of how we got here. In 2011, the RTC worked very hard in developing the Transit Strategic Plan and Service Guidelines. The RTC members representing SCA, many of whom are returning to the RTC this year, really did an outstanding job. It was really a great experience to work with SCA, and I think you, as a group, had probably the lion's share of the guiding hand and as we drew efficiencies for Metro. Last year, the committee did a solid job of focusing on the strategic plan-related issues, including approval of a baseline annual service guidelines report, revision to the strategic plan, and a review of the Transit Division's actions implementing important concepts such as alternative transit service and pilot programs we put in place there as well. There were also some major changes in 2012 that reflect the principles of the strategic plan which we adopted. In 2013, this year, we're going to review the second annual service guidelines report and a report on performance measures that is provided biannually, which is what we do. We'll also be working on a lot of other issues. The first alternative transit pilot project is now underway in the Snoqualmie Valley. The project will involve my council colleague Lambert, Kathy Lambert, the cities there, and community stakeholders, and I know that RTC will continue to follow as we develop that alternative service pilot project. Our biggest responsibility this year will be updating the transit strategic plan and the King County Metro Service Guidelines, focusing on creating better linkages between growth and transit service, transit-oriented development in particular. We'll have a lot of scenarios that will look into system contraction, stability, and growth. We've got a lot of work to do in the area of strategic plan update, and I think we're going to have an exciting year working on these policy questions and goals. There's some other issues that have really affected the metro system. It's $450 roughly million annually to provide bus service throughout King County. It is one of the largest transit organizations anywhere in the country, and we've seen some real changes as the economic slowdown hit several years ago. We had to deal with a lot of problems related to the drop in sales tax, and so we looked at a number of steps at the county council to deal with those shortfalls. We commissioned a performance audit, and we implemented some savings. We cut staff at Metro. We lowered overhead expenses in a variety of ways. We froze wages. We even were able to convert some reserves that were from the fleet reserve into operating expenses because we had fortunately overstocked our fleet reserve. And so we were able to bridge a very ugly chasm for a little while. We also, through this new transit service guidelines, we were able to really squeeze out efficiencies and get rid of what we call the dog routes, the bad performing routes, in place for other routes, and that saved some money as well. And then a year ago, the council approved a 2-year temporary congestion reduction charge. It was somewhat contested and somewhat hot, $20 of renewed car tabs. Now that congestion reduction charge, which is countywide, will expire in mid-2014, so about a little less than a year and a half from now. And barring some other change to additional revenue, we're going to see some large-scale service cuts resulting somewhere in several 100,000 hour range. And if you want to see kind of what that looks like, take a look at what's happening in Pierce County right now, where they just had to make a 34% cut in their overall transit service, which is substantial. And I'll be watching to see, how that reverberates around the community in Pierce. So we've got a lot of work to do. We have to decide whether that's something that we want to make permanent. We have to decide whether we can squeeze additional efficiencies out, whether we want to shrink the system. There are a lot of tough choices we have to make as well. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, both at RTC and down in Olympia, on how we do it. Generally, I'm a fan of having more tools for us to consider. Doesn't mean we always use them, but greater flexibility, I think, is generally good for us to work with as we make our decisions moving forward. So with that, I think appreciate the chance to be here tonight. I hope I gave a pretty good summary, and maybe I open it up, if I might, for a few minutes of questions, if there are any at all. All right, very well. You all look appropriately glazed over, and I look forward to regular reports on our progress. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Dunn. And you're so quiet tonight. What a quiet, shy, retiring group you are. You're usually so, I think everyone wants to go home early tonight. So, but we're joined next by Councilmember Joe McDermott. He's here to speak to us about Board of Health tonight. Councilmember McDermott joined the King County Council in November of 2010. He was reelected to a 4-year term in November of 2011. Councilmember McDermott previously served in the Washington State Legislature for a decade. As he began his second year on the council, his colleagues chose him to chair the Budget and Fiscal Management Committee. And in this role, Councilmember McDermott led the council's 2013 budget process. Joe's a passionate advocate for vibrant and safe communities, for reliable transit and transportation options, our environment, and civil rights. And among his other committee assignments, Councilmember McDermott chairs the King County Board of Health. We're pleased to have him here tonight to discuss the work of the Board of Health in 2013.
do you all play the same trick I try to play? If you walk up and stand here and walk closer, maybe they'll drop the intro a little sooner? No, she keeps going. Good evening. I'm Joe McDermott. I'm entering my third year as chair of the King County Board of Health. And as you know, my full-time job is as a King County Council member. I represent parts of the cities of Seattle, Berrien, Tukwila, and SeaTac. I don't have the good grace of being able to represent all of any one of those cities, but parts of all of them, and some unincorporated King County for good measure as well. But I'm here tonight to talk about the Board of Health. And the Board of Health has broad authority to protect human health in King County. It's a federated body. There are different ways to organize boards of health across the state. And in King County, it's a federated body, which means it's made up of health professionals, SCA members, representatives from the Seattle City Council, and representatives from the King County Council. When I first joined the Board of Health, I had a pretty traditional idea of what public health really was. I thought it was restaurant inspections, immunizations, controlling epidemics, and clinics for our community's most vulnerable. Some of those impressions come from having gone to public health myself to get my food and beverage workers permit twice in my life. First, as a high school student working at a family-owned delicatessen in West Seattle, and some 20 years later when I wanted to volunteer in my church kitchen. And I would assert that I'm the only Board of Health chair since I first got my food and beverage workers permit to ever hold such a permit personally. My previous impressions are important aspects of public health, but public health is evolving, and King County is really leading the nation in how that happens. What's causing the shift? A shift in what's killing Americans. In King County, 48% of deaths are preventable, meaning that 48% of deaths are premature. 38% of those premature deaths are attributed to tobacco use. 34% to poor diet and lack of physical activity. The board has developed innovative ways to address these premature deaths. King County was the second in the nation to require food nutritional labeling on menus. Now restaurant patrons know something about the nutritional content of what they're ordering. The board was also an early adopter of regulations limiting the sale of e-cigarettes. This keeps nicotine out of the hands of kids. And we've been a loud advocate for keeping the Clean Indoor Air Act strong, not chipping away at the clean indoor air that all of our employees across the county are currently guaranteed. But our work continues. Efforts to drive down tobacco use and encourage physical activity have been highly effective in our affluent communities, but we've left behind some of our disadvantaged neighbors. King County's health disparities are some of the worst in the nation. Health outcomes in King County for those who are educated and wealthy are disproportionately higher than those outcomes for people who are less well educated. When we look at why that is, it's really not the individuals. It's rather influenced by the communities where they live. Communities with shorter life expectancies often have limited access to fresh, healthy foods, and their communities also often lack important infrastructures like bike lanes and sidewalks that encourage physical activity. That's why the Board of Health looks for community and prevention-based solutions for public health risks such as these. One of our policy-making tools is guidelines and recommendations. These allow us to use the knowledge of public health experts to create guidelines and recommendations that encourage healthy communities. These have been actually met with great support from SCA members because they are not a mandate coming from the Board of Health or from the county. They're just a way to make best practices easy to understand and easy for local jurisdictions to choose to implement. But if we really want to reduce preventable deaths, the board must also address emerging public health risks. Drug overdose deaths surpassed car crashes as the leading cause of preventable death. Led by Mayor Dave Baker of Kenmore, the board is drafting legislation now to create a secure means of disposing of unused medicines. Many of your police chiefs have created their own programs that are currently being paid for, as you well know, out of your own city coffers. The program that the board is working on right now is expected to be funded by the pharmaceutical industry. I want to thank SCA for your leadership on this issue. Mayor Baker and others have truly been a champion. I'm aware of the work that the PIC has done also. And through this work, King County homes will be safe from dangerous unused medicines. People will have a safe, secure way to return those. Another emerging issue is healthcare reform. This year, the board will be looking at ways to leverage the Affordable Care Act to create a more efficient system that better serves patients. As part of this work, the board will examine a proposal to consolidate the Public Health Department and the Department of Community and Health Services within King County. And as we continue to see declining state and federal funding for public health, efficiency is more important than ever. And of course, the board will continue to advocate for dedicated, adequate public health funding. Dedicated funding for public health was decimated in 2000 with Initiative 695 and remains in peril today. And my time here this evening would not be complete without talking about one of the more controversial emerging issues in public health. And I was pleased to hear it already referenced this evening, gun safety. The number of Americans who die each year from gun violence exceeds the number of babies who die during the first year of their life. It exceeds the number of people who die of HIV and AIDS, and the number of Americans who are killed by guns is greater than the number of people who die from illicit drugs. Public health addresses every one of those three issues. We should also address the preventable deaths caused by gun violence. Deaths from firearms are preventable, and public health has a long history of successful, comprehensive strategies that drive down the number of preventable deaths. That's why I believe that the board has an essential role in addressing gun violence as a public health issue. At this month's meeting, earlier this month, the board called on state and federal lawmakers to take meaningful action to address gun violence and pledged our support of the president's proposals. But knowing that it's easy to call on other people to do work, but essential that we engage in that work too, the Board of Health committed ourselves to supporting efforts to reducing gun violence, including supporting a strong mental health system. And so as you can see, the work of the Board of Health is broad. We have a responsibility to ensure that we're helping others throughout our community, not just the affluent and the educated, reach their fullest healthy potential while also addressing emerging trends and health risks. And I would welcome all of your participation in the Board of Health. Thank you. And if Reagan and Deanna woke you up, or my comments did, I'd be happy to take questions. Otherwise, I'd be happy to sneak into the back of the room again, too. You're letting me off easy? All right. All yours.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for being here. You know, it's an unusual evening for us. Typically, these orientations, we've had mostly staff coming and presenting, and tonight we mostly have elected officials, and it's been a really nice change of pace, and I really appreciate all of you taking your time out of your busy schedule to be here. But we do have one person who's an exception to that tonight, and that's Beth Monsieur. She serves as the senior principal legislative analyst at King County and has worked with the county council for 16 years. She holds a master's degree in architecture and urban planning from the University of Washington and a bachelor's degree in architecture from Washington University. She's the lead staffer for the Regional Policy Committee and the Regional Water Quality Committees, and she's here tonight to discuss the upcoming work of those committees. And on a personal note, I just wanted to say that Beth's been a real delight for us to work with at SCA, and she's one of the county council staffers that we work with very closely, and it's a great pleasure for us to have her here tonight and to work with her on a regular basis. So thanks for being here, Beth.
Well, I can say the appreciation flows both ways. It's very gratifying to work with Deanna and with Monica and the other staff from suburban cities, and I do think this is going to be an exciting year where your intergovernmental staff are going to be talking to each other quite a bit. I also wanted to just start off by saying I'm very excited to be working with Councilmember Haig in her new role as the regional coordinator. and also to some extent with Councilmember Reagan Dunn, but I am here sort of as a stand-in probably for the two other chairs of the Regional Policy Committee and Regional Water Quality Committee. And I realized as we walked in, it's a good thing that you didn't invite them, because otherwise you would have had a quorum of the county council here, which would have come with all sorts of noticing requirements and other sorts of things like that. So I have been staffing the regional committees since about 2002. I originally started out working on housing and growth management issues, but I have really enjoyed this role that I serve. And in fact, one of the other things I wanted to remember to say right away is it is sort of a unique role that the regional staff at the council perform. I mean, technically, I am a county council staff person employed by the county council, but my work for the regional committees is really work for all of the committee members who are on that committee. And so I've brought business cards again tonight. I know Paul Carlson is here, who staffs the Regional Transit Committee as well. And we are also staff and resources to you as well. And I hope you will use our services or call upon us if you have questions or just need to track down a piece of information or whatever. So let me move on quickly then to the two committees that I do staff for the council or provide staffing. And of course, in both of those, I call quite a bit on executive staff and other council staff to assist me. But the Regional Water Quality Committee was established by the King County Charter, as well as the Regional Policy Committee, in 1994. The Regional Water Quality Committee develops, reviews, and recommends countywide policies and plans for water quality and sewer service issues, long-range capital facilities plans, rate policies and facilities, and, facility siting to guide King County's regional water quality responsibilities and for consideration by the Metropolitan King County Council. In 1999, the Council, upon the recommendation of the Regional Water Quality Committee, adopted the Regional Wastewater Services Plan that we also refer to as the RWSP, a plan to provide wastewater services to this region for the next 30 years through 2030. Members of the committee are elected officials from the Metropolitan King County Council, City of Seattle, suburban cities, and also sewer districts. So we have commissioners from the sewer districts on that committee. And I think maybe it was mentioned before, but the regional committees, there was a change in 2008. One was that the vice chairs of the committees are now non-King County Council members, and so they are elected by the, or chosen, selected by the other members of the committee. The other change was in terms of the Regional Policy Committee defining its own work program. So let me just highlight the Regional Policy Committee, and then I'll talk about what we're expecting to be doing in each of those committees this year. So the Regional Policy Committee develops, reviews, and recommends county-wide policies and plans regarding regional issues that it has selected to include in its work plan each year. In addition, it typically requests and receives briefings on a range of regional issues of interest to the committee. So just one more moment on, so the subject matter for the Regional Policy Committee consists of those countywide plans and policies included in the committee's work program by a majority of the members present and voting. So they essentially determine their own work plan, whereas Regional Water Quality and the Regional Transit Committee were the carryover from the previous Metro days and have more defined subject matters or areas. The Regional Policy Committee, though, has really varied from year to year in terms of what its subject matters and what the focus of the committee will be. It has ranged extensively from human services to courts to solid waste issues quite a bit. In fact, my father teases me with that Master's of Architecture degree. There I am staffing largely garbage issues and sewers pretty regularly.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So we have already heard from the Sound Cities Association in terms of the recommended priorities for the Regional Policy Committee this year. We are still gathering input from the City of Seattle and from the King County Council members on their priorities. But so let me just reflect back to some of you who may not have heard what your colleagues are recommending in terms of priorities. First, we have heard that there are state legislative priorities also for the Sound Cities Association that have to do with economic development, public records and disclosure, and transportation funding, being both transit and roads. And I think there will be common cause between the County Council members and City of Seattle, as well as Sound Cities Association on some of those issues. And frequently within the Regional Policy Committee is where we have developed letters of recommendation or communications that have gone to the legislature on those types of issues. But here are the other issues that have been identified as priorities for this year. One is the solid waste interlocal agreement extension. Probably many of you in this room have already had briefings on the solid waste ILA extension that will extend contracts from 2028 to the year 2040. The other thing that will be the follow-on to that, though, will be the review and hopefully the adoption of a new solid waste comprehensive plan in the year 2013. The other thing we've heard about is the King Conservation District Working Group and their recommendations. I understand that some of the issues that could come into play there could also involve WIRA funding, the flood districts, and the other watershed investment district concept that is being developed. We've also had a request for any proposals that are related to the Veterans and/or Human Services funding. The Regional Policy Committee was the committee that originated the recommendation for a veterans levy that then became a Veterans and Human Services levy. I'll remind you all that that levy was successfully renewed in 2011. Prosecutor Dan Satterberg talked about without MID we would have been almost nowhere in terms of some of the funding that we have for especially health and human services, but the other component of that really was a regional effort and came out of the Regional Policy Committee was that Veterans and Human Services levy that was just renewed last year. However, what I have heard is that the real interest is that if there is any consideration of a potential proposal for additional human services funding in 2013, that would be something that should be discussed in the Regional Policy Committee. I did want to just clarify that a motion that was passed earlier this year, or in 2012 by the Council, called for the development of a plan for accountable and integrated system of health, human services, and community-based prevention for the county's residents, and that plan is to come to the Council in mid-year, around June. It included a recommendation or information that should come forward about options for financing or using existing or new revenues under state authority. But we've heard you, and so I'm expecting that will be on the agenda. The other request was for anything that has to do with MID funding. The Regional Policy Committee was an active participant in approving the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Action Plan. My understanding is there's no changes expected in MID funding in 2013, but I do want to tell members that there is a new mental health recovery plan. This is sort of a follow-on to Kent Pullen's legacy of that mental health should really be moving people towards recovery. There has been a plan that was implemented and has gone through its 5 years of implementation. There is a new plan that will be coming to the Council and should probably be referred to the Regional Policy Committee also for review and approval or amendments. We also heard a request for emergency management planning to be on the agenda, or one of the subject matters, and also countywide transportation planning. My understanding is that there is an interest in finding a forum, potentially the Regional Policy Committee, where there could be discussion of local or regional road planning and funding, potentially even the place where King County discussions of tolling policies and those sorts of things would take place in the committee. I have to say we have never gone near that issue in the Regional Policy Committee, so it gives me a little pause, but we'll see how much we can get done this year. The other request is that any and all countywide taxing or levy proposals, except for transit, should be referred to the committee for review. We just had a briefing today on the EMS levy strategic plan. The committee has always had that role as being the regional reviewer of that EMS strategic plan. I know there's also interest in the what we're expecting in the way of a parks levy renewal for King County. The other things that were on the list included jails and district court services, the siting of regional facilities, possibly animal control, and then the final area that I do know that is of interest is also the countywide 911 system. That would include the study or recommendations that will come out this year with regard to the PSAPs, and also next year probably the 800 megahertz radio replacement or the regional radio replacement project. And finally today at the committee we had another request to add to our agenda surface water or stormwater MPDES permit standards or issues. So a very full and long list of items. I think it'll take the staff working together to figure out how we would fit all of that into 1 year, but we've heard you, as I said. So moving on to the Regional Water Quality Committee, let me say that I think one of the major issues this year that the committee will respond to is the EPA's recommendations on the Duwamish River Superfund cleanup. There have been multiple years of a feasibility study and an assessment, and finally EPA will make its recommendations. Prior to this, the Regional Water Quality Committee has never commented as a region in terms of what has been recommended or assessed so far. I think they will want to weigh in on that this year. The other thing that has been in the works for quite a while is a review of the capacity charge to ensure that growth is paying for growth. We are anticipating recommendations on policy refinements or an update to that capacity charge. I can tell you there are some differing perspectives. In this case, King County and suburban cities seem to be on the same page about this versus where the sewer districts in the city of Seattle seem to be. So that could be interesting. The other thing we've asked for, or that I am anticipating that the committee may ask for based on comments already this year, is monitoring and policy development with regard to the combined sewer overflow program implementation. The concerns have to do with controlling costs. I can tell you my council members are just as interested and concerned about that as well. The other thing I've heard interested in is the capital program debt and whether there is a need for additional policies. I'll just remind everyone that one of the major accomplishments of this region is that Brightwater was completed in 2011 and the wastewater treatment plant began operations. And then in November of 2012, we actually began discharging the effluent out to Puget Sound, so the tunnels are all completed and working just fine. It was a big period, or a long period, of much heavier borrowing to construct that facility. And so we are now returning to a more normalized period of borrowing for the sort of investments that need to be made regularly for capacity to meet regulatory requirements such as the combined sewer overflow. And some of you may have also heard that the council this week, after following the Regional Water Quality Committee, has approved entering into a consent decree in terms of implementing that plan to meet all of our requirements by 2030. But the other major area that the committee's been talking about is really, it's now also that we have $9 billion worth of assets basically in the ground serving this region. And so it's the investments that need to be made in asset management as well, balanced against the capacity and regulatory requirements. And finally, I'll say the last two areas we've had interest in is water quality monitoring, that is specifically in the basins where the combined sewer overflows discharge, but also more broadly to evaluate what the Executive and Wastewater Treatment Division's recommendations were for new or restored activities. And finally, interest on climate change impacts on wastewater treatment division facilities. Some of you may have seen City of Seattle just recently published their assessment of what is potentially vulnerable amongst their facilities. We had done an assessment a number of years ago, but we are also updating that. Along with that, the climate change impacts of ocean acidification and what that means to both our environment but also our economy here in the Puget Sound area. And with that, I will conclude and see if there are any questions. Great, I get off easy too.
Well, thanks, Beth. And you can see that why we like working with Beth. She's very responsive and she's very thorough, and she very much hears the concerns when we bring them to you. It's going to be a very full year at your committees, I think, Beth, and so we appreciate all your hard work. Finally, now, we have a couple of guests with us from the Puget Sound Regional Council. We have with us Charlie Howard, who is the Director of Integrated Planning at PSRC. He's been a real great partner to us. He's here to help answer any questions, although I'm not sure, Charlie, we might not have any questions for you, given the way the night's been going. But we're really pleased to have with us Commissioner Josh Brown. Commissioner Brown is the senior member of the Kitsap County Board of Commissioners, and he serves on the boards of Kitsap Transit, Housing Kitsap, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, and the Kitsap Health District. And Josh has really distinguished himself as a regional leader. He's president of the PSRC, and he's here in that capacity to speak with us about the work of the PSRC in the coming year, and we're really pleased to have him here. So please join me in welcoming him.
First, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, Deanna, you and your team are doing an outstanding job for SCA. And it's really nice to be here. It's also nice to walk into a room where I see so many familiar faces. I've gotten to know a lot of you over the years. And I think these presentations, what it's hit home for me, on the car drive over here from Port Orchard, I was listening to the radio about a big conversation out of Washington, D.C. Today about the Senate agreeing that they're going to try to finally pass a budget for the first time in several years. I tell you, if you're here in this room today as a citizen, you would be overwhelmed by the amount of work and the amount of priorities and opportunities that local government is spearheading. You know, cities and counties, this is where the rubber meets the road. And personally, as a county commissioner, you know, our job in Kitsap County is part county executive, part legislative authority for our county government. I share those responsibilities with two of my colleagues. I'm always impressed when I come to a meeting at night where we have a lot of elected officials from our city families. And I know a lot of you have full-time jobs, and you choose to be on the city councils throughout the region, helping to provide that voice at the local level. It's just another big assignment. So I think up to this point, you've heard a lot of great conversation about things that are happening at the county level in terms of regional partnership and ways that there needs to be cross-collaboration, coordination, and those are a lot of the similar things that we're responsible for with over in Kitsap County. But I think there's also a broader discussion about regionalism, and that's at the four-county region. You know, I think we all know, just as I crossed, I'm in my third county today as I drove over here, we're part of a broader regional economy, and we have regional needs that cross county borders. So the Puget Sound Regional Council, which it's been a significant honor the last 2 years that I've served as president of the Regional Council, we're the metropolitan planning organization for the four-county region of King, Kitsap, Pierce, and Snohomish County. We have about 3.7 million people, and the challenge that we have as a region is between now and roughly 2040, we're expecting the population of the Portland metropolitan region to move to our four counties. So how do we plan for transportation? What land use policies do we put in place? How do we ensure that we have a thriving economy? Those are all challenges that we need to roll up our sleeves to confront together as a region. And if you can think of the Puget Sound Regional Council, and as I look around at a lot of the folks I think are going to be serving on the various committees for the council, we have a lot of folks that have been serving for many years. But really our organization is charged with federal and state responsibilities that create basically a three-legged stool. We deal with transportation, we deal with land use, and we deal with economic development. So we have three policy boards that hit those areas. Our Transportation Policy Board, Growth Management Policy Board, which helps focus on the vision for the region, as well as the Economic Development District Board. About 10 years ago, the Economic Development District was a separate organization. Via interlocal agreement, the Economic Development District merged with the Puget Sound Regional Council. So the same staff, the same offices, create some real economies of scale. And the goal is to try to link those three areas up in terms of regional decision making. So we have a lot of challenges in front of us, but you know, I think I can honestly say that this is my 7th year as a county commissioner. The best organization that I've ever been a part of, and I think the best time that I've had learning about our region, helping to make a difference, and what's been most enjoyable are the hours that I've put into the Puget Sound Regional Council. I've actually so far served on every one of our boards and committees. So that's something that I don't think everyone can say, but when you have a 3-member board of county commissioners, it's a little easier to do. Our bench strength is not as great as some other jurisdictions. So, and one of the things that I wanted to do coming up in April, on April 25th, is our General Assembly meeting. So we meet once a year where all of our member governments have a seat at the table as part of that General Assembly. So along with the 4 counties, we have over 80 cities. We have a half a dozen transit agencies that are part of the Regional Council. We have several federally recognized tribes, 4 major ports, all member organizations of the Regional Council. The Regional Council, in terms of the next year or so, in terms of big things that we're taking on, if you've been involved with the organization so far, probably one of the things, if you hear about the Puget Sound Regional Council, I know this is a case over in Kitsap County, so I'm assuming it's the same here. One of the things that probably catches your ear is the federal grants that are made available periodically. That's always an exciting thing. Where are there transportation dollars to help us at the local level implement projects? Well, over the next 2 years, throughout the 4-county region, there is going to be roughly $340 million distributed of transportation projects. Some of those are transit investments, might be buying new buses for Sound Transit or for Metro. It might be investments in asphalt overlays. They may be capital projects in your jurisdiction, and I know there's a lot of jurisdictions that have been impacted positively in this funding round receiving those dollars. There's a couple different ways that those monies are distributed, but really that process starts at the Transportation Committee, where a lot of that work begins. And in a little over a year, and this is something where a lot of the uncertainty in Washington, D.C. impacts us in our region, but in about a year, we should begin the process of the next project selection cycle, where we would gear up and begin to talk about how could we best allocate these limited resources to our region. What is the process to do that? Looking at a lot of the issues about, should we target big regional projects? Do we want to have more monies available at the localized level? How would we approach that? So that's a big topic and a big item. And what we've been going back to as an organization in terms of a planning document is our Transportation 2040 plan, which was adopted a few years ago. We're in the process of an update to the 2040 plan. So again, if you're serving on the Transportation Committee, some big things that are going to be coming your way this year. I know that an issue of utmost importance to all of us that we can't work on alone is economic development. And where is Dennis Law still here? Did Mayor Law step out? He must have just done the welcome. But the prerogatives of being president. Well, one of the big things that I think we've made an enormous impact on, and I was going to reference the mayor because the city of Renton is of course impacted tremendously by aerospace, as is Everett. But I think, like all of you, when you read the Seattle Times and you see problems with the 787, you see it doesn't take a scientist to realize that that's going to have an impact on all of us. That's going to have an impact on our entire 4-county region. In Kitsap County, we're probably the least impacted directly by those aerospace jobs, but it has a real impact regionally. We've really rolled up our sleeves as an organization, I think, in the past few years, and I give a lot of credit to Bob Drew, our executive director, who was past Snohomish County executive, getting traction on aerospace. And our strategic advantage as a region is our workforce, and it's also where we're most vulnerable. As a baby boomer generation begins to retire, when you look at the number of engineers working in aerospace, when you look at the machinists, those things are rippling through the aerospace just like they're rippling through our workforce at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard in Bremerton. So we've been able, I think, to push and help state leadership get traction on a lot of important endeavors. One of those important endeavors is this past year, Governor Gregoire established a statewide director of aerospace. There's finally now one person who is responsible, reporting directly to the governor, who's going to be their point person on all aerospace issues. The gentleman's name is Alex Peach, and I think to really show the strength of our organization, the Puget Sound Regional Council, Alex spends about 40% of his work week in our offices in Seattle. So he's here in our region doing work benefiting all of us. But we advocate at the local level on having that position created. Another area where we've gotten a lot of traction recently is expanding engineering degrees throughout our state. Again, about a year ago, Governor Gregoire sent to the legislature, which they approved, a down payment to help expand the number of engineering degrees. We were able, just in Kitsap County at Olympic College, to double the number of four-year degrees. You saw those increases at, throughout the collegiate system in our state. But it was local government that was really hammering away on it. And a good friend of mine, Dave Gossett, who's a Snohomish County Council member, I heard him say once that, when you're in local government, it's nice to say that you're a part of economic development, but actually translating that to progress is something different. And what I would contend is, in our region, the way that we're able to get traction, whether it's on aerospace, whether it's our defense cluster jobs, whether it's supporting trade, it's with all of us talking with one strong voice and advocating for things as a region. And that's why I've continued to participate and am so thrilled with the work that we're doing at the Regional Council. A committee that I'm chairing right now that's doing terrific work impacting many of your communities down the road is our Growing Transit Communities Project. A few years ago, we received a pretty significant grant from HUD that allowed us to be able to help do corridor planning for not only our light rail stations, but as Metro has expanded their rapid ride system and bus rapid transit throughout the region. The idea is to help provide tools for local governments, and in this case, it's cities in most cases, to help be able to plan for these once-in-a-lifetime investments. As you're building these light rail stations or bus rapid transit stations, it's nice to have the service, but to be able to have that service in a way so that it positively impacts your communities, and being able to help provide the resources and the tools for local governments to be able to ensure that these once-in-a-lifetime capital improvements have a positive impact. Those are critical opportunities and challenges that we confront. And then finally, one of the things that maybe as elected officials we take for granted, but I know my staff in Kitsap County and yours in your jurisdictions don't, is the reliance on data that makes sense. The Puget Sound Regional Council does a lot of work making sure that the population projections, a lot of the things that we need as part of our work as elected officials to make coherent, sound policy choices, making sure that that data is correct as a baseline. So a lot of tremendous work. And, if you're new to the Regional Council, I really look forward to getting to know you and working with a lot of you. And again, it's been great to get to know Don and Jeannie Burbidge and Mayor Hill and many others. One thing I will just share at the end here as I wrap up, our organization is going to be going through a transition this year. I had mentioned Bob Drew, our longtime executive director. Bob's planning to retire later in the year. So we're going to be going through a process, and the executive committee is charged with doing a lot of work in between General Assembly meetings to make sure that we have a sound leadership transition. So the officers and the organization have been really focused on that. So again, hope I covered a good overview of the Regional Council, and I also would be remiss, Charlie Howard, if you could stand up. Charlie is our Director of Integrated Planning. So one of the things that we've taken on as an organization a few months ago was to help ensure that our economic development, transportation, land use plans, our efforts are integrated. Charlie now has all those departments and teams reporting to him. So I think it's going to help us be more effective as an organization. But we have a tremendous team at the Regional Council, and it's been a real pleasure to be able to get to know them closely, and I know they'll be a tremendous resource for all of your jurisdictions. So thanks for having me, and I'd love to answer any questions, but if you don't have any, like everybody else, that works too.
Any questions? Well, thank you.
All right, I got off easy. Thanks. All right.
Well, how about a round of applause for all of our presenters, because we just had a great group tonight. In just a minute, we're going to do some breakout sessions, and we're going to mix things up a little bit tonight. But before we do that, I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking with you about how the regional boards and committees work and the expectations that we have for our SCA appointees. This is especially important because we do have a number of new electeds working on committees this year, and we're really excited about that. As I mentioned earlier, as an SCA appointee to a regional board or committee, you're serving on behalf not just of your own city, but of your 35 member cities of SCA and the 1 million residents who live within those cities. And that means really that you're here to represent the positions of the collective will of those SCA cities. I'm going to give you really a brief overview of this tonight, but if you have any questions about this down the road, please feel free to pick up the phone. Call me, call any of our staff members. The booklet you were given tonight gives you information on who staffs all these different boards and committees. And we're here, think of us as your staff away from home, basically. That's what we are here to do, is to work with you and staff you. So please don't hesitate to call us at any time. But especially, again, for those of you who are new to SCA, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on how SCA policies are developed and how that then translates into the work that you do on your regional boards and committees. So every city that's a member of SCA has a seat on the Public Issues Committee, or the PIC. And every city has an equal seat. That means that a city like Algona has the same voice on the committee as a city like Kent does. And so that's one of the features that makes SCA unique. We did take a look at that policy this summer. We did a membership survey, and it was met with a lot of enthusiasm and continued interest from our cities that we maintain that. And so that's the way that it works here. So the PIC is the policy-making body of the SCA, and when the PIC votes to take a position on an issue, and then the board adopts that position, committee members, and that means all of you, are expected to vote in a consistent manner with those positions when you're going and serving on these different regional boards and committees. Now, obviously, there are lots of issues that come up before your regional boards and committees on which there is no formal position, or not yet a formal position. And so one of the things that you should understand as a regional board or committee member is that even in that case, it's not just like you're going to go in there and sort of freelance, basically, because one of the things that we do, and one of the things that makes us really strong as an organization, is that we have caucuses, and we have caucus meetings before our meetings, so that people can get together and talk with your fellow elected officials and develop positions that really represent a consensus position between the cities, so that we don't become at odds with each other, and so we're able to really take richer and stronger policy positions as a result of that. Now, that's not always possible. Sometimes there are just issues on which there is not an ability to, or time sufficient to build a consensus position. In that case, it's not as though, because, you know, if there's 6 members in a committee, if 4 of you think one position is good and 2 of you don't agree with that, the 4 don't get out, vote the others. In that case, you're free to vote the position of your city or your individual conscience if your city doesn't have a position on something. But there is a caveat to that as well, is that you're expected not to vote in a way that's in conflict with an adopted SCA position. And so if you have any questions about that, please let us know about if you have questions about positions that we have. The adopted positions are in your booklet, and they're on our website. And by the way, we'll be launching our new website here in a couple of weeks. We're really excited about that. So in addition, SCA's policies prohibit members from taking positions that are divisive, which is defined as creating disunity or dissension between our members. And we also have policies that prohibit the organization from taking policy positions that are affirmatively harmful to our member cities, even if a supermajority of other cities think it's a good idea. We really try to work together and to make sure that our positions are consensus positions and that our cities are working together on those. And so we ask that you adhere to those policies while you're serving on committees. Another thing you should know while you're serving on as an SCA representative on a board or committee is that you're really expected to do your homework. You know, your fellow city council members and mayors that serve in these committees with you are doing their work. They're coming in prepared. We as staff try to do a good job to make sure that you are up to speed on issues, and if you need additional background, we're here to give that information to you. But we do ask that you go in prepared to committee meetings, and that you attend all the committee meetings and all the caucus committee meetings, because that's where a lot of the work gets done. And that applies to alternates as well as to committee members. And so if you're an alternate, you're part of that discussion, you're part of that policy making that goes on, and that's part of what makes us strong as an organization. So if you have any questions about this, please let us know. Finally, one thing that I should mention to you about this year, at the annual meeting, the body decided to adopt term limits for our boards and committees of 6 years, and that will take effect next year. And so a number of you here have been serving on boards and committees for 6 or more years, and will be transitioning off. And I see Councilmember Butler is looking at me with a. But one of the things that someone actually said when we were talking about this policy, what about Fred Butler? He serves on RTC. We don't want to get rid of him on the committee. But I mentioned that for a couple years, Councilmember Butler had asked to serve on the Transportation Policy Board at PSRC, and there was never a vacancy. So I think that there's ways that we can move people around who are experienced, and we can tap into that collective knowledge, but also get some new, fresh blood going on. So I think that the membership adopted that position this year. So one of the things I'm going to ask all of you to be doing, starting tonight, is really thinking about how do we do that succession planning? How do we transition to make sure that all the knowledge that our experienced members have is being translated to some of our newer members, and we start bringing people up in terms of leadership and in the organization. So with that, we're going to take a minute to break out. We're going to try to wrap up as close to 8 o'clock as we can tonight. We're not going to reconvene here, so once you're done with your discussion, feel free to go ahead and leave. But in addition to having you seated with members of your committee, we're grouping some of those committees together so that we can have some overlap and not just have siloed discussions. And so I'm going to mention to you where we've got folks and who's going to be staffing those and some of what we've got in mind here tonight. By the way, a number of you serve on lots of different committees, and so you won't be able to go to all your committee meetings tonight. So we're not going to do necessarily election of chairs of caucuses, because we'll be anticipating that happen at the first caucus meeting of the year, because we do want to have people have an opportunity to talk with each other tonight and actually just get some discussions started and kicked off for the year. So over here, we're going to have the PSRC Executive Board and the Regional Policy Committee sort of meeting jointly. Those are the committees that are really overarching committees that can take on a variety of topics. Some of the real leaders in our committees are on those. I'm going to be sitting with you and just talking in general about what are some of those big picture issues that you'd really like us to be tackling this year at SCA. And you heard a lot of those already mentioned by Beth in her presentation tonight. We've also grouped our transportation committees together so that Regional Transit Committee and Transportation Policy Board can get together. One of the comments we've been hearing from folks this year is, how come there isn't a committee? And Beth sort of referenced this. There's not one committee, that it's a King County specific committee that really talks about all the different transportation issues. So we thought we'd start some of those discussions tonight, and Monica's going to be staffing those for you. She's our transportation expert. We also put together our land use groups of GMPB and GMPC, and our board vice chair, Bob Sternoff, is going to be helping sort of steer some of those discussions and talking about some of those common issues that might come before those committees this year. We've got a table put together for regional water quality, flood control, South Central Action Committee. We're going to sort of tag team that. We're going to have Christy and Monica sort of bopping back and forth between that. We've just got not enough staff and lots of committees here tonight. We've got a table put together, or sort of a group of tables here in the front, on Regional Law, Safety, and Justice, the MID, DVI, EMS, Board of Health. We'd like to get those groups talking together about how those issues overlap with each other and maybe ways that we can bring and dovetail those committees together. I'll sort of help come in on those and hope that John Partridge, who's chairing the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee this year, maybe can help start some of those discussions off for us. And then the other issue that we've got going on that we wanted to group together is our Economic Development Committee meetings. So EDDB and Enterprise Seattle, if those folks could get together, Doreen's going to staff that. That was identified as really one of our major priorities this year, but through our caucus meetings and through our board discussions, is how can we be better addressing some economic development issues. And Charlie Howard and I have been doing some discussions about that, about how we can better coordinate with PSRC and SCA on that. So we're going to have all you folks get together, and Doreen's going to sort of pick your brains about what we can be better doing as staff for you on those topics. So again, we'll try to adjourn as close to 8 o'clock as we can. Let those discussions continue if you need, but we do need to get out of the room. So you can continue those over coffee or an adult beverage of your choice if you'd like to continue those later. But we really enjoy having you here tonight, and we hope that this is a productive discussion for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to pick up the phone and call us. But thanks for being here, and let's have a great conversation. Thanks.